Hello, everybody. It is June the 21st, 2025, Saturday here in Japan. And as we speak now, it has been over a week since the deadly attack, sneak attack by Israel on Iran last Friday. And what we are seeing currently is that we are in the midst of a very deep fog of war and a lot of misinformation actually in all spheres from normal mainstream media up to also alternative media. And we can see how this media battle and the narrative battle over what's going on is feeding directly also into the political process because currently as we speak, the United States has not yet made a decision to intervene directly militarily. So I would like to use this episode here to look with you at these different narratives and what they are doing and how this disinformation is currently feeding into a war frenzy and a war frenzy that we have also seen back in 2003. But there are more parallels to make and more things to say. So first of all, like when I speak about the US not being involved yet, I mean not yet using US military assets themselves in order to fly and start bombing Iran. Of course, the US is already involved. Of course, massive numbers of US made bombs and weaponry and planes and so on are being used by Israel. And of course, US intelligence is being involved and that is being fed to Israel by US actors. I mean, the US, the state itself is, of course, deeply involved, but currently the front end to implement this military action is Israel. And naturally the US and the European countries are backing this with their rhetoric and also the media might. We've seen that in other episodes. But so far people are waiting because this is what Israel would like to do. Israel would like to push the United States directly into this into this endeavor. We are seeing this pretty clearly here. There was in the Times, the UK newspaper, there was recently or is today this article written by a prominent British historian, Neil Ferguson, and the Israeli wanted war criminal, Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense, former Minister of Defense of Israel, that Israel has done most of the job. Now Trump can finish it. Only one Air Force has the power to take out Iran's last standing nuclear enrichment site. And this is really, really important. I mean, apart from the fact that this is written by a wanted war criminal, but what's really important is that right now, as we speak, the idea of a good part of the Israeli state and of the media is to push down this narrative in our throats that all they need is one little, U.S. intervention in order to deliver this bomb, right? This bunker buster bomb. And whenever you want to be fed stupid graphics in order to be sold a war or to be sold war crimes, you go to the New York Times, right? The New York Times is an expert at this. The New York Times is the paper that gave us these graphics, right? That showed how under, I think it was Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza, how there was a huge bunker network on the ground, and they did a 3D graphic to show, the bunker network and why Israel had no choice but to attack the hospital and how that's not a war crime. Of course, I mean, once Al-Shifa was, or whichever hospital it was, I might mistaken the hospital, but whichever one it was, once that that was completely bombed out and the Israeli military was there and media was there were no bunkers to be found. There was no underground network. It was a lie. It was a blatant lie. And so the New York Times is doing this again, right? They show us these cute little graphics in order for us to understand what has to happen, right? So the current narrative says we need these B-2 stealth bombers that then can deliver one of these GBU-57, the bunker busters, right? We need the bunker buster that can go really, really deep. And here another cute graphic, right? Because we know these installations are deep inside a mountain or in a hill, and here you need about two of these bunker busters to reach this, right? If two of them like hit the same spot, even though the New York Times and so on says it's quite difficult to achieve, but if they hit the same spot, they go deep enough, and then boom, and then everything is gone, and the nuclear program is once and for all eliminated. Now there are a lot of commentators, including of course Daniel Davis and the who did a wonderful show also with Ted Postel, to explain just how even from a technical perspective, how stupid this is, right? And how difficult this will be achieved, apart from all the unknowns, because it's not really known how deep this structure really is and how it is built up, and this is all highly speculative. So what is actually going on here is that we get this narrative that this would be a limited operation, right? It's a limited affair. All that's needed is this little bit, right? It's big bombs, yes, big bombs, and okay, it's an escalation, but it's limited. So that this is being massaged. It's not being said outright, but it's being massaged into the brains to understand is not that huge a deal. However, the one thing that everybody leaves out is that, of course, if such a mission would be flown by the US, this would, of course, naturally immediately trigger retaliation by Iran, because Iran said, if you, America, strike us, we will strike you. And we have dozens and dozens of potential targets. Let me show you this. I think I forgot to prepare it. Here it is. Just for your general information, the U.S. military presence, Bloomberg graphic. How many, just how much U.S. personnel there is in the region to hit. I mean, Iran could hit at U.S. personnel in Iraq or in Kuwait. There are a lot of aircraft carriers. There's a lot of ships right now in the Gulf of Persia, right? And I mean, there's just no shortage of potential targets around here. Which also, again, whenever somebody says that Iran is this empire of evil, and how dare they make weapons when nobody threatens them, and then you look at all of this and you're just like, yeah. One really needs to be blind to all of the threat that the United States and Israel are trying to project towards Iran. So there is just no shortage of potential targets. In addition to the fact that this is probably precisely what these warmongers are counting at, because as soon as then the U.S. personnel is targeted, a larger and broader warfare can be would necessarily have to start, right? The United States would then claim, okay, we have been attacked and we are the victim, even though we went and tried to bunker bust these Iranian sites. But that's exactly the type of escalation that these people here are envisioning. Now, in addition, of course, we're sold the idea that Donald Trump, that we are currently in this period of waiting for a decision. And I must say, many of us, also very, very brilliant analysts, I mean, Alexander Mercury's and others, they expected that this beat towards a U.S. intervention would already start somewhere around Monday or Tuesday this week, because that's when this whole rhetoric really reached a fever pitch, and when we saw for the first time some erratic behavior also from Donald Trump, who got really, really mad when pressed about the assessment that Iran was about to develop nuclear weapons, because you remember this entire story here hinges upon the idea that Iran wants to develop nuclear weapons. That all Israel is doing is trying to preemptively to take out the nuclear threat from Iran, right? That's the entire story at the moment. So Trump last week then was pressured very hard while on Air Force One on the way back to the US by US media, which were quoting Tulsi Gabbard, who in March this year, and Tulsi Gabbard is, of course, the director of all the intelligence services of the United States, and Donald Trump has is one of the trusted people of Donald Trump, or used to be a trusted person, who he appointed. And Tulsi Gabbard has been a long-term anti-foreign war person, even though she was the part of the she was a service member. I don't know which force she was serving in. I think she was in the army, or was she in the navy? I forgot. No, I think she was in the army. And then of course she became a senator. She became a politician, and she was one of the strongest in the Democratic Party voices against foreign interventions, to the point where she even left the Democrats and then joined the Trump team when he, during his campaign, had this very strong anti-foreign war rhetoric. And I mean, he's always looked as if though he trusts her quite a bit. Now, she came under heavy, she then did this, she had this announcement in the Senate in March, where she presented a report on intelligence report on security threats, and in that, while she presented that, she said that there was no indications that the intelligence services had that Iran was building a bomb, and she came under this assessment by her put Trump under pressure, and in return now, obviously, she came under heavy pressure, very, very heavy pressure, because yesterday, unfortunately, Tulsi Gabbard took it back. She tweeted this unfortunate post. Let me read it out to you. That this honest media is intentionally taking my testimony out of context and spreading fake news as a way to manufacture division. America has intelligence that Iran is at the point that it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months if they decide to finalize the assembly. President Trump has been clear that can't happen, and I agree. My full testimony below. So she's taking it back. She's taking back the assessment that Iran is still far away from developing a bomb, and that Iran is not working on a nuclear bomb. And then she posts 1 minute 40-second testimony of her, which is actually the exact testimony that people have been tweeting out, in which she actually she says we don't have any indication, and she doesn't say anything to the contrary in what she herself here posted about herself. And just if you wonder what the entire assessment is, I mean, the good thing about the United States is that this kind of stuff is all out in the open. You can just go and look it up. It's called the Annual Threat Assessment of the US intelligence community. Even with this very beautiful, like, greenish covers, like, I'm always surprised by how much they also like invest into making these reports, these dull reports, look fancy. So this is the report from March. This is what she presented, and all you need to do is to go down to page number 26. Where is number 26? Because here the assessment starts about Iran. Here's number 26. Where they talk about Iran and its WMD, so weapons of mass destruction. And this is precisely what she was reading out, or, well, what she was reading out was like a put together version of this here. We continue to assess Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and that Khamenei has not reauthorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003, though pressure has probably built on him to do so. And the report is, this report is very, very straightforward and very realistic. In the past year, it says, there has been an erosion of a decades-long taboo on discussing nuclear weapons in public that has emboldened nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Khamenei remains the final decision-maker over Iran's nuclear program, to include any decision to develop nuclear weapons. This is also why some people are assessing that the United States and Trump have backed down from assassinating Khamenei, because, if Khamenei at the moment, it seems, is still very strongly against these nuclear weapons for clerical reasons, because he says these are weapons that God doesn't want people to have. I mean, just need to repeat that for people who also think that these theocrats are all crazy. So this is the report. It is here, and this report doesn't say, as she is claiming, that we have intelligence that says that Iran is only weeks or months away. If that is the case, then in this report they were hiding that information from the public, which then would raise the question, of course, do these people just lie to the Senate and so on, right? Which they probably do, obviously. But then again, I mean, it creates this problem now. But it just shows, this affair shows us how much, even within the United States, in the top circle, in the top circles, there's intense pressure brewing, and this pressure is not necessarily just directed by one side and one force. I mean, the media pressure actually on Trump to say something about her earlier assessment was rather large, and the fact that he got mad and angry at such comments also shows us that there is, so far it seems that a straightforward decision hasn't been made, although it is, of course, also assessed that this might all be a ruse, right? So right now, the United States is saying we want. Donald Trump said he will make a decision within the next 2 weeks, whether to enter or not. And of course, making a decision to that means make a decision to enter. It's well understood. Now, there are a lot of people who say at the moment, also online, that this might just be another one of these tactics to lull Iran into complacency, because this could, because of the sneakiness of the last attack, right? And Alexander Mercouris pointed this out, and this is an important thing, that that it's really interesting that the Iranians were bragging about their sneak attack, how they managed to surprise Iran, right? Then the Americans said, like, yeah, we helped with this. We are very proud that we could help the sneak attack. And Iran also says, like, this was a sneak attack. We were not prepared. It caught us off guard. It was a sneak attack, and the fact that all three of them agree that it is a sneak attack, when in fact a lot of people at the time said Iran is on the direct threat, right? An attack might come pretty soon, might show that Iran is using this as an excuse that it's so much of its air defenses were taken out, and that it obviously was poorly prepared, or that this attack succeeded to a quite large extent. Although by now, of course, Iran is firing back at Israel big time. But this first strike actually was quite did work quite well. Now, the but this narrative is now there, right? That sneak attacks is something that the United States supports, which then raises the question: why would anyone ever believe that this is true? And Seymour Hersh, only 2 days ago, the great U.S. journalist, he predicted that it would be over this weekend that the U.S. would launch its surprise attack, of course without announcement, right? In order to get the surprise element, and that all of this talk here about putting off the decision is only part of a new ruse to basically trick Iran again. Now, I don't think that Iran, or actually anyone, is still believing that this is a strong indication that no strike is coming. I mean, exactly this might be the case, that the strike is imminent. And what we are then also seeing, and I find this fascinating, is how we are being massaged also on social media at the moment with this other idea. So, first idea, the only thing we need to do is to take out the nuclear weapons, right? The nuclear weapons are the problem, and the nuclear infrastructure, and we need a surgical strike. That's idea number one. Idea number two, that's being massaged, is that we need that the West, the United States and Israel, need to help the Iranian people, right? This is also a very, very old trick of the warmongers, to separate the leadership from the population and then claim that we're fighting for the population. They did that to an extreme extent in the Iraq War, to the point where even George Bush Jr. actually started believing this propaganda. And when he went to Iraq, and there was no applause for him, he was actually bewildered. Why are the people not happy that we liberated them, right? They framed it as a liberation. And this is being done again. Just this time, it's also being done on the Twitter sphere, on social media. So I am very surprised, I must tell you, that on my own Twitter feed, I get a lot of these posts at the moment, a lot of accounts that claim that they are, Iranians, obviously, with a picture of a young woman in a hijab, and the post then reads, "Oh, the Israeli fighter jets are the only thing protecting us the Iranian nation. If the regime doesn't fall, it will begin slaughtering us. So this post pretends to be a post by an Iranian woman quoting the other Iranians saying we need the Israelis. The Israelis are bombing Iran, but they're bombing the regime and they're protecting us. The post then also says these are the most repeated sentences among Iranians now. The world must wake up and stand boldly in support of Iranians and Israel. And then Lion Sun, the rising lion. That's the name of the operation, right? And an Israeli flag. Um, I mean, this is obviously propaganda. Uh, the- and I would, my best guess is that this comes straight out of Israel, and these are bots that post this kind of stuff in large quantities. This is utterly unimaginable. Also, the way it is framed and phrased, and how the Israelis just can't resist putting their own goddamn flag into every post, because that's how attached they are. Even when they pretend to be Iranians, they still have the urge to just put their little flag in there, right? That's just how delusional they are. But I don't know with how many people this works, because this is the other narrative that's being built, that the Iranians themselves want to be freed from the shackles of the mullahs, of the Ayatollah, and be freed from this oppression, right? And that the Iranians themselves are basically begging the Americans to finally bomb the regime. So. Um, all of this, and let's skip this one. Let me point out that if you want to get an actual assessment, you should first and foremost try to talk to a couple of Iranians, especially also people who are critical of the Iranian regime. So my direct contact and friends who dislike the regime very much, they all told me they're telling me the same right now. Uh, this is galvanizing actually their community, because it's actually proving the Revolutionary Guard rhetoric as correct, because the Revolutionary Guards and Khomeini and so on have been saying for the past like decades, we must get ready to be attacked. They will attack us. Our nation will be attacked, so we need to get ready, and we need to build a resilient country. So right now, these people, and it's not just the Persians, by the way. It's also my friend is not of Persian descent. He's from one of the minorities, and they also the minorities. They feel Iranian, right? They are Iranians, and they understand that their state is under attack, and they now rather rally together, which is something happening. And you go and read this article here. I recommend it. It's very well written and a good analysis, and just also use a lot of common sense. Written by this researcher here, Narges Bajoli. I will try to get her on my channel if she wants to come online. I'll reach out to her. She is currently a associate professor at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, and she wrote several books on Iran and also on the impact of sanctions and so on. And she wrote a very well structured piece here. I'll put the link into the description. It's on the Time magazine. An important part here reads that American analysts often underestimate the strength of the Iranian state, which is structured for survival. That's precisely what's happening all the time. And in people who compare Iran with Iraq do not understand what they're talking about. Iraq was way less organized and way younger than the Iranian nation and the Iranian system. And she explains, for instance, this is important to know, that militarily, the Iran is built on a dual architecture. First, what you have is Artesh, the regular armed forces of around 420,000 men across ground, naval, air, and air defense forces. And then you have the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, which is an elite ideologically driven military with roughly 190,000 personnel across ground, naval, and air branches. And those are two military military branches, right? And they can operate independent of each other. That's the whole point of having two. Then beyond them you have the Bazish. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this Bazish. A vast paramilitary network with hundreds of thousands of members embedded in every corner of the Iranian society, in the streets, in neighborhoods, in schools and mosques. So part of it's militarized state system, right? You have the state that penetrates really deep into society. So despite Israel's extensive and quite successful campaign of assassination targeting senior IRGC commanders, the core of this group has not been hollowed out, but hardened. A younger generation of more ideologically rigid commanders has emerged. And many people have been pointing this out. All that these decapitation strikes do is they bring up a younger and probably more adapted and maybe more and savvier generation to power. I mean, this is not a one-man show, and it's not a flimsily built structure. You have a proper pyramid, and the pyramid has all of these structures and mechanisms to bring up new people, right, and educate them and get them in line, and then they will work and they will take over the keys of these institutions, right? Because it's an entire institution. It's not just a couple of like loosely associated fighters, not at all. So she then also talks about that the bombing campaigns could significantly destroy military and civilian infrastructure in Iran, but to replace the Iranian regime, President Trump has to be prepared to fight not just a standing army, but a system with decades of experience in asymmetric warfare. This is something that's currently being systematically shut out of the discourse in other mainstream media. Although I must say, I take this back. I'm sorry, because this is in the Time magazine. I mean, Time magazine definitely counts as mainstream. So I'll take it back. This is obviously a discussion that is ongoing, but it is, in my perception, crowded out from the headlines, right? Just what we are actually talking about here. She also says then that the war with Iraq scarred Iran, and there was a long 10-year war, right? 10-year war between Iraq and Iran. And that this was an experience that still reverberates until today. However, it taught the country that survival does not require parity, but endurance. In the decades since, the Iranian state has reorganized itself, not for peace, but for siege. Its military doctrine is not built for conquest, but for resistance. This is a very good observation, right? And this is what you're up against when you advocate for these bunker busters, right? You advocate for beginning a war that would drag in a nation that has been preparing for a war on its own soil for decades. The article then also talks about the end of the likelihood that this attack and whatever's going to come next will actually speed up will actually lead to a decision to build a bomb. Again, if the United States tried or did kill Khamenei, the one who stands in the way of making a bomb, the next person who comes in might immediately withdraw the fatwa and just order his forces to restart the program despite the bombing, right? So you would have then the political will to actually do it, and if the United States is not utterly successful in bombing this facility, then they might even also retain much of the capability to do so relatively quickly. So the article absolutely logically correctly ends with the conclusion that the irony is that the most ardent proponents of regime change in Iran may be accelerating the very nuclear program they claim to fear. So, and again, I point out that I don't know who she is and what her political convictions are, but she doesn't look to be like an Iranian, nationalist, regime-friendly nationalist. That doesn't seem very likely. It seems like she seems to be a person, an Iranian who is just trying to be realistic about the way that she knows the state and how her state actually functions, and how these different also sociological mechanisms grip into each other. This article, by the way, was sent to me by my Iranian contact, my friend, and so this is also what Iranians are trying how they are trying to assess the situation, right? So it's a far cry from this kind of Israeli propaganda. But this just shows how strongly this war is also fought in our minds, right? That Israel seems to feel the urge to propagandize you and I, like with everything they have, even if they do it clumsily, not understanding that, well, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this works on people. Maybe this is what then a lot of people in Europe run around and say like, look, Iranians themselves want to be liberated. I don't know. I just to me it strikes me as bizarre. But and these things are popping up a lot, and I don't know. Right now they're popping up a lot on my stream, and usually in my stream I get about 4 or 5 messages of people that I follow who say things that I think are intelligent, and then I get one or two every 5 6. I get every 5 6 messages. I usually get like one tweet that is obviously put there by Twitter in order to provoke me a little bit and make my blood boil. But right now I get 4 or 5 of these types of tweets for every one tweet by somebody like Arnaud Bertrand or other reasonable people who analyze world affairs logically. So the all out Psy-Op is on the way, is rolling. And of course, we then also have this entire obsession of the United States to frame everything as this large contest, right? Between the powers, and everything is with us or against us. And the another New York Times headline saying that a U.S. attack on Iran would show the limits of China's power. China, which depends on Iran for oil and to counter American influence, has a lot to lose from a wider war, but there's not much it can do about it. Which then again is as an article that frames this whole thing as part of the larger contest, the way the Europeans and the Americans are seeing it, right? They see everything as okay, between large centers of power, and this would be something. If successful, of course, it will weaken. Not only will it eliminate Iran, it will weaken China. The Also on this level, on the China level, the China connection to the Iran war, we see massive amounts of propaganda. One was caught by my friend Arnaud Bertrand. Again, go and subscribe to his Twitter. He's absolutely brilliant. So yesterday he pointed this one out about a story in the UK Telegraph. And I mean, this is a large mainstream newspaper in the UK, right? That even it even prides itself. This is the newspaper here that look at this. It prides itself the UK news website of the year 2024. And then they put out an article that is entitled "China sends mystery transport planes into Iran." Flight plans indicated a final destination of Luxembourg, but the aircraft appear to have never flown near European skies. Wait a minute. We tracked something, and then they show you the flight path. It took off in China, and it landed, and it just disappeared somewhere over Turkmenistan. So it must have gone to Iran. So what was in there? What are the Chinese hiding? Did we just catch them red-handed, like trying to support the Iranian regime? Are there weapons transports ongoing? Huh? The media, the guardians of truth, we will find it out. This is investigative journalism. Arnaud Bertrand beautifully deconstructs this, saying how dumb it is to build an entire newspaper article just around the fact that a plane stopped showing where its location was on Flight Radar 24, because it took him less than a minute to actually go to a different he said, true, if I go to Flight Radar 24, I can see that this airplane somewhere over Turkmenistan actually just, I mean, the flight was interrupted. We don't get any information anymore. But then if he goes to another flight tracker, you can also see that how very shortly after it obviously landed in Ashgabat in Turkmenistan, it continued its route to Luxembourg. the very same flight, right? So it just continued. You just need to go to another flight tracker that actually has all the data and not just partial data. And it also, even further, if you go and look at this particular plane here, it goes back and forth on that route the entire time, and usually, mostly, it does probably refueling in Ashgabat, or for whatever reason, it just has a landing in Ashgabat, and that's the entire explanation. And he beautifully says it took me literally 2 minutes to figure that out. But for the propagandists, this is already, this kind of cursory, like unknown little thing, like a flight path, is already enough to construct an entire article and then put that into the Telegraph. And all of that is, of course, then part and parcel of the propaganda onslaught. And this is the article by this genius, Sophia Yan. I believe that she probably thought she must have found something, right? And she's this brilliant investigative journalist when all this is just a stupid scoop. And probably these people feel under quite a lot of pressure to produce something. You have to, in order to prove your worth as a journalist, you somehow have to find something that connects with the current crisis. And she just throws herself at the first best kind of piece of information or disinformation that she can find. Utterly dumb, just stupid, just really dumb. But that's the entire information space at the moment. So again, if you want proper analysis, you go to places where you find articles. One of them is actually also on Russia Today. The Russians at the moment, they publish a lot of good analysis, very useful ones. So here by Ladislav Zemanek, a non-resident research fellow at the China CEE Institute, he wrote a good article about Chinese-Iran relations, right? And does a proper assessment. And you can tell proper assessments because they usually try to take into consideration several points of view and contradicting issues. He says in one part that in this unfolding crisis, China has made its position unmistakably clear. It backs Iran's stance and rejects any military path to resolving the nuclear issue. This aligns with Beijing's long-held diplomatic posture, recognizing Iran's right to peaceful nuclear energy under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, while firmly opposing any move toward nuclear weapons, which would violate international norms and run counter to China's vision of a nuclear-free Middle East. So this is very good analysis, because China is not just, it's not just either you're with Iran or against Iran. No, you have states have different interests when it comes to each other. And this Chinese-Iranian relation, as analyzed by a Russian, obviously doesn't go all the way. I mean, China has an interest in supporting Iran, and this interest is also built upon Iran just also being China being a responsible stakeholder, right, and not wanting escalation in its near abroad or anywhere, in fact. But the article then also goes a bit deeper, saying that despite ongoing sanctions, China remains Iran's top trading partner and largest buyer of crude oil, purchasing as much as 90% of Iran's exports. This is also very important to know, right? China has also an economic interest of making sure that Iran remains fine and stable, and that this relationship should, of course, from the Chinese perspective, continue. So that's why China has been outspoken and actually told, also in a phone call, Wang Yi told his counterpart in Israel that they do not support the Israeli action at all and condemn them, and they have done so also on the UN level. But still, China's backing of Iran is not without limits, the article says. If Tehran were to block the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point for over 25% of global oil and 1/3 of LNG shipments, China's economic interest would be directly threatened. Likewise, a withdrawal from the NPT would challenge China's commitment to multilateralism and the international legal order. So there are also things that China wouldn't want to see from Iran, and that also makes utter sense. And China, obviously, at the moment is trying to also somehow work with Iran that this hopefully doesn't become a reality. I think I absolutely agree. Beijing has no appetite for open confrontation. Utterly not. That's why China and Moscow and Russia, both of them, are trying to help de-escalate the situation. But we know that the Israel, of course, and the United States based on pressure by Israel, but also based upon a very, very long-held like neocon beliefs about, total dominance in the Middle East. That they want this escalation. There are factions. There's a good number of factions in the U.S. that really push this, and why we don't have this war yet. It might be that Donald Trump is resisting. It might be that he's actually resisting because we know he resisted before. He had a chance to start a war with Iran already in 2019, and he resisted back then and ordered the Navy to stand down because there was this incident in 2019 when Iran shot down a U.S. drone over the Strait of Hormuz and over Iranian airspace, and the U.S. took that as a reason to say like, oh, now we need to shoot back and we need to shoot at the installation that shot down our drone. And according to Donald Trump himself, it was he who said like, no, we don't do that. It would kill 60 people. We are not doing that. That would be out of proportion. So, and this is the main reason why I had some hope that Trump was actually serious about not wanting a next Middle East war, but we are seeing that the pressure is huge, and considering just how he flip flops and takes the perspective of whoever talked to him last. Of course, the decision to actually go to war might already have been made, and last week it really did look as if though the U.S. Is just minutes away from attacking. But the hope would be that that's not the case. But of course, this is maybe also just wishful thinking from my part. But let's keep this in mind. That we have this political power game going on at the moment in the United States, and our brains are part of that power game, right? The influence on the population, because the population need to be brought somehow, at least to some extent, on board. We see how the Europeans are partially on board, especially the Germans. The French, though, Emmanuel Macron said he doesn't want this, and it seems that in France there's much more opposition. In Germany, I must say, from the German my Twitter feeds from Germany that I read, especially the political establishment, seems very much on board. That's also why this comment recently, this horrible comment by Chancellor Merz, that he's happy, he's proud that the U.S. that Israel is doing the dirty work that needs to be done. In this entire situation, again, I want to point out that in this moment of high insecurity, and while bombing between Iran and Israel are ongoing, and both capital cities are burning, it's still this huge danger that we might see a false flag attack, right? And I showed this tweet before. Ray McGovern warned us already almost a week ago that the USS Nimitz is expected is now nearing or is already around the Persian Gulf, and that this is an old aircraft carrier. It's a 50-year-old carrier that is near end of life. And that the question really is, why would you order such an old vessel to the Middle East? And he's saying like they are being prepared to be a bait and to be sunk, but not sunk by Iran, sunk by probably by Israel or by U.S. forces themselves. I mean, who knows? I mean, we have the precedent actually that Israel attacked the U.S. Navy and the USS Liberty also about 50 years ago, and that this outrageous act then was covered up in order to again just paint this picture of the Israelis as victims, and that the United States needs to help, when in fact whenever convenient they kill U.S. Service members when it helps their case. So right now, killing U.S. service members and blaming it on Iran would, of course, probably push the U.S. over the brink and into this war. So this is why a lot of people are worried about this. To the point, I mean, look at this. It's just an old carrier, right? To the point where people are posting memes on Twitter, luckily, so that nobody can say we didn't tell you so if something like this happens. Yeah, so this is This is the rumor on the internet that the sole purpose of this thing is to actually just function as a target of a failed flag attack, because Iran would be utterly dumb and stupid, of course, by themselves to attack these assets. They certainly don't will not do so. They haven't done so over the entire last week. Again, the potential for attacks, Iranian attacks on U.S. Assets and service members is huge. You don't even need to choose one of those. You can do anything else. But of course, these ships, these aircraft carriers, they're ships. What do ships do? When you hit them, they sink, especially when you hit them with a hypersonic missile. Ray McGovern also points out that that one of these things costs $13 billion and might puts the risk of 5,000 sailors at risk. So very, very irresponsible, just highly irresponsible things to do. Last thing I want to point out, the dishonesty of the media at the moment, again, is when it comes to these double standards of how any kind of strikes on Israel are being reported, when very clearly right now the New York Times distributes blame, right? Iranian missile hits hospital in southern Israel. Yeah, if you compare that, and people luckily on Twitter do that, they compare it to previous statements on how the New York Times reported when hospitals in Gaza were struck by Israel. Gaza City hospitals are caught in deadly crossfire. Revisiting the Gaza hospital explosion. Strike on Gaza hospital destroys UN supplies, Palestinian officials say. Many are killed near a Gaza hospital, its chief says. In a strike, the Israelis say was aimed at Hamas. It's very different reporting, isn't it? That's part of the framing, not just the wording, but the framing, that you attribute blame directly. Iran's missiles hit a hospital versus kind of, the hospital in Gaza just exploded. Just, it's very unfortunate. It just went up in flames. And of course, this is the media spin. But again, we need to pay attention to this, how this manipulation is working, and to what end it is intended to work on us. To massage in, of course, the idea that going to war is really important. So I believe that this entire narrative, this dual pillar, on the one hand, that we just want to bust a bunker. That's all, just drop one or two bunker busted and done. We go home. Plus the idea of where is it? The idea here of the Iranians. The Iranians themselves are calling us to help them. That this dual narrative is just supposed to massage in the general public the idea that war is not only inevitable, war is good, and we do this war to help. I also think that the decision might not have yet been made, and I think that the battle of narratives that we're seeing going on is actually a strong indication for this one. Maybe Donald Trump already took the decision, and we're seeing a diversion, this 2 week time frame. But maybe it actually is still a battle within the highest decision-making circles on what the best way forward is. And we know we have a pro-war faction, and we know we have a faction that's against it. And at this point, I also want to just add that a lot of people are taking Tulsi Gabbard's tweet from yesterday, where she said, like, no, we have evidence. No, the Iran is building a bomb. Many people are calling her a sellout and saying, like, look, you betrayed everything, and you're part of what's evil and bad about this system. You're now supporting an attack on Iran. While I do think that that's the effect of what she said, it might also just indicate that she's not willing to leave her post. And to be honest, I'd rather have a Tulsi Gabbard, a lying Tulsi Gabbard, inside the current system than a honest Tulsi Gabbard outside. Considering that she is a politician, and that she's a savvy politician, and that she understands that how power functions, in my interpretation, she might have chosen to lie against better knowledge publicly to the public, also maybe even in a way that is meant to be understood as her lying in order to remain within the inner circle of Donald Trump, in order to not withdraw herself or be kicked out, in order to somehow keep a line of communication to Trump open. I judge that as a possibility. So although it is either way dishonest, from a point of view of utility, from a point of view of utility, she might still actually want to try to influence Trump in a way to step back from this brink and therefore remain, instead of being a a martyr of truth, a martyr of like then leaving the administration and waving flags and accusations against Trump and you're evil and so on, because then she's out and removed, right, for this scene and period. On the other hand, lying to the general public through Twitter in order to re-cuddle up to Donald Trump might actually have a political utility. She might also just be an apparatchik, right, and try to just maintain her position and have other motives. But considering the way that she used to be straightforward about her assessment and realist in her assessment and anti-war in her assessment, if we try to frame what she just did with this tweet, with her previous actions, then I would think that it might be a possibility that she's just trying to remain inside the circles in order to hopefully prevent the worst, because she used to be a voice of reason when it comes to foreign wars, but sometimes you have to make a trade-off in order to remain inside the circles of power. But again, I'd rather have a lying Tulsi Gabbard inside the administration than an honest one outside, if provided that her actual assessment hasn't changed and her actual intention of guiding Trump away from this lunacy is still the same. We will only know once this is over, maybe years, maybe decades from now, when the archives open. So long story short, the propaganda war, the war for your perception, for my perception, for what we're saying, for what we're seeing, and how we interact is in full swing, and the battle on the highest level of the decision-making process. And while all of this is going on, of course, both Tehran and Tel Aviv are burning. The exchange of fire is continuing, and while all of this is happening, Israel still kills like dozens of Palestinians a day in Gaza, executes them point blank when they try to get food, and still bombs them. I mean, there's still like up to 100 people a day dying. And I did an interview with a Palestinian professor in Bethlehem in the West Bank, and it's an utterly horrific situation. The genocide is still ongoing. So even while Tel Aviv is being bombed, the Zionists are not stopping the genocide in Gaza. They don't have anything. They still have time to do a genocide. Which, by the way, is also the Nazis. They continued the genocide on the Jews basically until the very end. This is the unfortunate mechanics of this, that once you have a system of mass extermination in place, that system itself has funding and resources in order to keep going, even while the state is under heavy, even military attack, right? That's the point where we are. Sad times, but I still hope and keep my fingers crossed that maybe the big intervention of the US will not come. Thank you for your attention.